guys, welcome back to my channel. Simone here. So today I'm going to be filming the second part of my 3-star reads of 2017. I'll link the other video I did below where I talked about the first 15 of those books. I have another 15 today, so let's get started. So I mentioned in my last video that for me a 3-star read is one that I liked but wasn't like groundbreaking enough for me to give it more than 3 stars. 3 stars for me is quite a solid rating, but I do also think that like for example for me, middle grade books, generally the highest I will give them is a 3-star unless they are amazing, but if I've given a middle grade book a 3-star, that's kind of like a 5-star to me, I guess, in terms of middle grade, just because I don't really read them and I find that I give them slightly lower ratings just because that's my personal preference. If you disagree or you do different things, then that's great, but that's just how I do it. So without further ado, let's go on with it. So the first book I'm going to be talking about today is The Virgo Club by Suzanne Power, and this book was one of those books that I'd had on my shelf for like probably 5 years or more, and I just decided one day I'm going to actually finally pick this book up, because to be honest with you, if I hadn't picked it up then, it probably would have gone in my book unhauls, which I will link those below so you can go and check them out. But I unhauled a load of books in December, and I think, to be honest, this book probably would have gone in it if I hadn't read it, and I'm glad that I did read it. It basically follows these 4 women who are all friends, and I believe it's the second week, it's every second week they meet in this restaurant and they have dinner together, and but they are completely different women. And then one day, I think they're all having kind of relationship problems, and they decide that they're all going to attempt to seduce their friends' husbands. They like decide between them who's going to get who, and they try to seduce them to find out how strong their relationships are and kind of find out what's going on. But then there's lots of like people falling in love with each other and all sorts of things. It's really, really interesting. I also kind of think that's a recipe for disaster, but that's just a personal thing. I really enjoyed this. My favourite person in it was actually probably the guy that owns the restaurant that they always go to, this Italian man. I loved him. I can't remember his name. I can't remember any of their names. But he was just really, really funny and I liked him. I did find this to be a little bit all over the place, and to be honest, I didn't really connect with some of them because there were so many different characters, but I did enjoy this book, and I would definitely say that if you enjoy that kind of like romancy kind of comedy book, then you would enjoy this one, so I would definitely recommend. Next up is The 100 by Cass Morgan, which is the first book in the 100 series. I don't know how many's in the series, and I actually read this because I watched the TV show, the first season of The 100, and I really enjoyed it. It basically follows these, it's a dystopian world where nobody lives on Earth anymore because Earth has been, like the atmosphere on Earth is toxic to humans, and so they've moved to these kind of like spaceships above the Earth, and essentially if you're a criminal on this world, they will, I forget what the term is that they use, but essentially they'll just like shove you out of the thing, like you get put into the air and obviously die because there's no air and no oxygen, and that is if you're 18 or over. If you're under 18, you get put in these like prison type things. Anyway, there's 100 of these prisoners, including the main character, who suddenly it's decided that because there is not that much oxygen left on the spaceship, like it's not going to be able to sustain human life for that much longer, they are going to send these 100 under 18-year-olds to Earth to see whether or not it can be lived on yet, and it's like an experiment type thing, and it's about these 100 teenagers going to Earth and figuring out what's going on. Again, I really enjoyed this. The idea of this is really fascinating to me. I think I probably prefer the TV series a little bit, but I did enjoy the book, and I probably would continue the series if I found them in the library. I wouldn't necessarily go out on my way to buy them, but I found it to be interesting, so yeah, I would probably read these in the future. The next one is one that I went massively between 2 and 3 stars for this, and to be honest I probably should have gone with 2, but I went with 3, so Anyway, here it is, and that is Tuck Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt. Now, when I was reading, I saw this on someone's channel, I can't remember who, and I was reading that apparently it was supposed to be a really like classic thing and everybody read it and everybody loves it, and I just didn't really understand that. It basically follows this girl who meets this family who live by this sort of lake, brook, stream, I don't know, and if you drink the water from this stream you will become immortal and won't be able to die, and it's about this family and this girl meeting this family, and I just didn't really think much happened. It was a case of like, oh, this girl, will keep this girl here, and then, oh, hang on, there's someone coming for this girl. I don't know, it was very much all over the place. Now I think about it, I probably would give it 2 stars, but in the moment I obviously gave it 3, and it's in this video now, so it's officially a 3-star. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this book, I didn't find it to be particularly interesting. So yeah, that's how I felt about it. Next up is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. I mentioned when I read this book in November that I really didn't want to like it. It basically is written by a man who is a vile human, and he's made some horrible homophobic comments and just other things that I just don't agree with, so I didn't want to support him. I got this book from the library because everybody'd been talking about Ender's Game and how it was amazing, so I thought I'd give it a go, and I'm not that sad that I didn't love it because it means I don't have to read any more of his books. I actually unhauled his Earth Unaware book that my boyfriend read and thought it was okay, he didn't love it, and I just think I'm not going to read any more of his books because I didn't think it was that great. It follows a boy named Ender who has been sort of hand-picked as the saviour, I think, of, essentially they're fighting aliens, and Ender's quite good at doing that, I guess, so he's sort of trained up to be this leader, I guess, and yeah, I didn't love this. It was okay, it just wasn't my favourite, so I'm not too bummed about that. Then I have a book that came from my stand up to the TBR, and I'll link the first video in that series below, and that was The Infection by Craig DeLuey, which is a zombie novel basically. It follows a group of 6 people who have all kind of clubbed together after zombies have taken over, and they are sort of trying to fight against them and find somewhere safe for them to live. And I found this really interesting. I really enjoyed the element of the 6 different people because I thought it was interesting to see the things from different perspectives, and obviously each one had their own story and had their own background, so really fascinating, and yeah, I enjoyed this one. Gave it a 3-star. Glad the stand up to the TBR made me read it. Then I have The Sculptress by Minette Walters. I actually really enjoyed her writing, and this basically follows a girl who has been arrested for murdering her family, and she has the nickname of the Sculptress. She's a very large woman and she's now in prison, and this journalist is basically hired to write a book about her, or like write about her, so she goes and has interviews with her and realises that she doesn't think she's actually guilty, and so she then basically is trying to find out who actually did it. And again, I really enjoyed this one. I didn't think that the ending was great. Like, I thought, like, I guessed what had happened, and I don't know, I just found it a little bit awkward, but I did really like this one, and I think if you're somebody that doesn't usually read thrillers, then you would probably enjoy this more, but I think because I read more thrillers, I kind of know, I can guess what happens at the ends of them because I've read so many of them. So maybe if you're someone who's slightly less aware of the kind of endings of thrillers generally, then you might enjoy this more than I did, but I did really like this. Next up is Along Came a Spider by James Patterson, and in the last video I did talk about James Patterson's writing in general being often indistinguishable from other books. Like, I struggled to kind of know which one's which, but I actually really enjoyed this one. This is the first one in the Alex Cross series, which I am now collecting so I can read them, and I've seen the film of Along Came the Spider. I think it's got Morgan Freeman in it, and I really enjoyed the film. I will say the book is very different to the film. It has a lot of extra plots in it, which you don't get in the film. The book has those things, which I found really interesting. This follows a man who's basically now investigating the disappearance of these 2 rich kids, and they have been kidnapped by their school teacher, and it's about like them and the Secret Service trying to figure out what happened, because the school is like really protected with security guards and bodyguards, because these children that go here are all very like wealthy and come from very affluent families, so they don't quite know what's happened or why it happened. Again, loved this. I think that the series gets better because I've read some of the later ones. I'm now trying to start again and start from the beginning, but I have read some of the later ones, and I prefer them probably slightly more, which is why I gave this a 3-star. I do think if I'd read this one first I would have probably given it a higher rating, but obviously series tend to kind of get better as the author writes more and knows the world more. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more of this series. Next up is Doing It, Let's Talk About Sex by Hannah Witten. Hannah Witten is a YouTuber, and she wrote this book obviously about sex and about the different aspects of sex. There was lots of things in this. There was a lot of really interesting information in this, and I enjoyed the kind of like personal touches that Hannah put in, and obviously talked about her life as well. And I do enjoy Hannah in general as a YouTuber as well. The only reason I gave this a 3-star and no higher was because I did feel like at times it was kind of textbooky. I did feel like some of the stuff that she was talking about wasn't very specific, like in terms of it wasn't very personalised. Like I felt like some of it, not a lot of it, but some of it was sort of like you were reading a textbook. So I didn't enjoy those elements personally, so I gave it a 3-star, but I did still really enjoy this book, and I think Hannah did a great job. Next up I have a bit of a controversial one, and that is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. I would probably give the film a 5 out of 5, but I only gave the book a 3 out of 5 because for me personally I didn't connect to the characters as much, because this is narrated by Death, and I kind of struggle with that a little bit. I felt like the characters, I didn't get enough from them, because I did feel like I felt like I was distant and watching something else happening, like I was watching a TV show happening where I couldn't connect to them as well, because Death was kind of like almost like a filter in front of them, because it was from his perspective. And yeah, that's why I gave this a 3-star. I did enjoy it, and it did make me cry actually. It was a really beautiful book. I just wish that it had been written either in 3rd person or from one of the characters. Maybe 3rd person would have been better. I don't know, something about it I just couldn't quite connect to. Next up I have another book from C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia series, and this one is Prince Caspian. This follows a boy whose father is killed, I believe, and his uncle decides to try to oust him from his rightful place on the throne, and it's then a battle, and it also then involves the Pevensey children who are in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and they are sort of called back into Narnia, and they have to help him figure out how to defeat his uncle. And I liked this one a lot. Again, this is middle grade, so 3 stars is a really high rating for me for middle grade. I love this one. I enjoy this one probably slightly more than Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, but that might just be because I've read The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe so many times that it sort of sometimes loses its shine a little bit when you read it too much. But yeah, I really liked Prince Caspian, and yeah, I enjoyed all of the Narnia books, to be honest. Next up I have The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey. I actually read this in December, and then me and my boyfriend watched the Fifth Wave film on Netflix, and I liked the film better than the book, I think. For me, the reason I didn't enjoy the books was because it was very middle of the road. Like, it was very generic dystopian to start with, and I felt like a lot of the things that happened in it, I was kind of like, oh, this again, like I've seen this before too many times. And again, it might just be because I've read so many dystopian novels that they don't necessarily stand out to me very much. I did enjoy this book. Like I said, I much prefer the film, although the film and the book I find are very different. Like, there is not that much similarity to it. I probably will continue the series, but I have heard that the next one, The Infinite Sea, I think it's called The Infinite Sea, the second one, is pretty bad. So I don't know, if I find it in my library at some point I may read it, but I'm not going to get out of my way to do so. Then I have another childhood classic, and that is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. I actually have out of the library right now Forever by Judy Blume, which I think is one of her more like young adult ones, which is a bit more racier. But Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is just great. I love this book. It's about a girl named Margaret, and she is kind of getting boobs and things are happening, and she's kind of growing up, and she's like hitting puberty, and she's kind of talking to God as if like, please, what are you doing? Like, what's happening? I don't understand. And I love this. I felt like this was really relatable. I remember when I read this as a child going into puberty, this really helped me and taught me a lot of things. So yeah, reading it back was just really nice and nostalgic. So I would say if you have children or you know a child that's going into that, I would definitely recommend this book because I think it definitely really helped me. Next up is Agent 21 by Chris Ryan, and this is the first book in the Agent 21 series. I have decided not to continue on with this series because I think the first book was okay on its own and I don't really feel I need to read any more. Of course that might change, but that's my decision at the moment. But this follows a boy whose parents are killed in this horrible tragedy, and one day, so he goes to live with his aunt and uncle and his cousin, and then one day he is sort of kidnapped, I guess, and taken to this place where basically he becomes Agent 21, and he doesn't know what happened to the 20 agents before him, but then he's thrust into this world of like spying and espionage, and it's great. Like, it was really fun to read, and again, it's middle grade, so it's a 3-star, but yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I think that if you like that kind of like spy thing, I think that you'll enjoy this. It's not generally the thing I would tend to read, but I did still really enjoy it. Then we have the last of the Narnia books I read this year, and this one was The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and this is by C.S. Lewis, and this one is actually my favourite in general of the Narnia books. This is about only 2 of the Pevensey children. It's about Edmund and Lucy, the 2 youngest, and they, along with their cousin Eustace, who is a nuisance, they get transported through this picture into the sea, and then they get rescued by the Dawn Treader, which is this big sort of ship that is trying to find these lords that have gone missing. And I just find this whole thing really interesting, and I love the BBC adaptation of this because it was just so amazing. And I love the fact that Eustace is really annoying to start with, and how he goes on from there, which is great. Again, this middle grade, again it's 3 stars, but definitely my favourite of the lot. And then the final book that I read that was 3 stars in 2017 was Happy Days, the Illustrated Autobiography by Ollie Murs. Now, you may not know, but I am a big Ollie Murs fan. I went to see him in concert in 2012 at the O2, and my friend had tickets, but her friend had let her down, so she couldn't go, and she asked me if I wanted to go. Now, at the time, I'd not heard any of Ollie Murs' music really, like apart from like the 2 or 3 singles that he'd actually brought out. I just wasn't a big fan, I wasn't that interested. And then we listened to it on the car on the way to the show, and then I loved him. I think he's amazing. Like, his performance was great, and this book really interested me because it told me a lot of things I didn't know. At the time I didn't know that Ollie Murs was a twin. And there was just lots of different things about his childhood in there, and there was lots of pictures and photographs. So although I'm pretty sure this book was had like 250 pages in it, I think only about 80 of them were actual like written pages, which I quite liked, and it was nice to look through some pictures and sort of see his X Factor days and just all the things that were going on. I really enjoyed that. So yeah, I would definitely say if you like Ollie Murs, you'll like this, and I do, so it's a 3-star. So that is all the books, well, that's the rest of the books that I read in 2017 that I gave a 3-star to. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought. I will have my 4 and 5 stars coming up soon, hopefully. Yeah, I hope you're looking forward to them. Put my little notification bell on in case you missed them, and I shall see you in my next video. Bye guys.